They called me a homewrecker, a gold digger, a woman who destroyed a family for money. But let me tell you what they never knew. My name is Diana, and for 23 years, I loved a man who wasn't mine to love. Thomas Morrison. 65 years old when he died. Brilliant businessman. Devoted father, they said. Loving husband, they claimed. All lies. Well, not all lies. He was brilliant. But devoted? Loving? Those words belonged to what we had, not to what he had with them. Let me take you back to where it began. 23 years ago. I was 35, recently divorced, working as an event planner for a hotel in downtown Chicago. Thomas walked into my office one rainy Tuesday afternoon in March. He needed help organizing his company's annual gala. 600 guests. Black tie. The works. I remember everything about that first meeting. His kind eyes. The way he actually listened when I spoke, instead of just waiting for his turn to talk. The tired sadness behind his professional smile. We worked together for 3 months planning that event. Professional. Appropriate. But something was there. A connection neither of us expected. The night of the gala, after all the guests had left and my team was packing up, Thomas found me in the empty ballroom. We talked until 4 in the morning. About everything. About nothing. About the lives we'd built that didn't quite fit anymore. He told me about his marriage. 28 years with Patricia. Met in college. She came from old money. He came from nothing. Built his fortune from scratch while she spent it maintaining their social status. Separate bedrooms for 15 years. Conversations only about schedules and obligations. Staying together for the children, except the children were already grown. Before we go any further into this, I just want to say, if you feel a connection to these stories, a small click on that like button and subscribe would mean more to me than you know. It lets me know I'm not just speaking into the void, that you're really here with me. Alright, let's continue. I should have walked away that night. Should have said thank you for the conversation and goodbye. But I didn't. Because for the first time in years, I felt seen. Really seen. We started meeting for coffee. Then lunch. Then dinners that stretched into evenings. We talked about art, music, books, dreams we'd given up on. Thomas told me things he'd never told anyone. About growing up poor. About his father's alcoholism. About building his company from nothing and losing himself somewhere along the way. I never asked him to leave Patricia. Never gave him an ultimatum. Never caused a scene or made demands. I knew what this was. What it had to be. He was married. He had 3 children. Michael, Jennifer, and David. All adults by then, but still his children. He'd made a commitment, and despite everything, he was a man who honored his word. So I loved him quietly. In the margins of his life. Tuesday and Thursday evenings when he could slip away from the office. Sunday mornings when Patricia was at her society brunches. Stolen hours that belonged only to us. For 23 years, I was the woman he came to when the weight of his other life became too heavy. I was his peace. His truth. His home. Did I want more? Of course I did. I wanted to wake up next to him every morning. To spend holidays together. To be acknowledged. To exist in the daylight instead of the shadows. But I also wanted him to be happy. And leaving would have destroyed him. The guilt. The public scandal. The disappointment in his children's eyes, even if those children barely spoke to him unless they needed money. So I stayed in the shadows. Made peace with loving someone I could never fully have. My friends didn't understand. Diana, you're wasting your life on a married man, they'd say. You deserve someone who can give you everything. But they didn't understand. Thomas gave me everything that mattered. His time. His trust. His vulnerability. His love. The things Patricia never wanted. I knew about her. More than she probably realized. Thomas told me everything. How she'd known about us for years but never said a word. Not out of pain or heartbreak, but because divorce would mean losing the lifestyle. The country club. The mansion. The social status. Patricia had her own life. Her charity galas where she played the philanthropist. Her tennis instructor who was definitely more than just a tennis instructor. Her shopping trips to Paris and Milan charged to Thomas's credit cards. Their marriage was a business arrangement, had been for decades. Thomas provided the money and the respectable family image. Patricia provided, well, I'm not sure what she provided besides expensive decorating choices and social connections. But she kept her title. Mrs. Thomas Morrison. That mattered more to her than love ever could. And the children? Michael, Jennifer, and David? They barely knew their father. Not really. Michael, the oldest, was 41. Investment banker in New York. Called Thomas maybe once a month, always when he needed advice on a deal or a loan for some investment opportunity. Never just to talk. Never just to ask how his father was doing. Jennifer was 38. Lived in Los Angeles. Aspiring actress with no actual talent but plenty of her father's money funding her career. She'd visit twice a year, always with a new headshot portfolio and a pitch for why she needed another $50,000 for acting classes or a showcase or whatever the newest scheme was. David, the youngest at 35, was the worst. Entitled, lazy. Still living in the guest house of Thomas's estate at 35 years old. No job. No ambition. Just entitlement and resentment that his trust fund wasn't bigger. None of them visited Thomas because they loved him. They visited because they needed him. Needed his money. Needed his connections. Needed his signature on checks. I saw it. Watched it break his heart slowly over 2 decades. I remember one Tuesday evening, about 5 years before he died. Thomas came to my apartment and just broke down. Sat on my couch and cried. Real, gut-wrenching sobs. It was David's birthday. Thomas had arranged a dinner at David's favorite restaurant. Made reservations weeks in advance. Bought an expensive gift. Showed up early. David never came. Never even called. Thomas waited alone at that table for 2 hours before finally leaving. Later that night, David texted. Not an apology. A demand. Need 20 grand for car repairs. Wire it tomorrow. That was Thomas's relationship with his children. ATM transactions disguised as family bonds. But with me? Thomas could be himself. The kid from the South Side who loved jazz music and old movies. Who dreamed of retiring to a small cabin in Montana and just existing. Away from the expectations and the pretense. We'd spend our evenings in my small apartment. Nothing fancy. Nothing expensive. Just us. Cooking dinner together. Watching old films. Talking about everything and nothing. Those were the moments Thomas was truly alive. Not at board meetings or charity galas or family dinners where everyone performed their roles. But in my tiny kitchen, dancing to Miles Davis while pasta sauce simmered on the stove. I never asked him for anything. Not money. Not gifts. Not status. He tried, of course. Wanted to buy me a house. A car. Wanted to set up accounts in my name. I always said no. Diana, let me take care of you, he'd say. You already do, I'd reply. This, US, is enough. And it was. It had to be. Years passed like this. Tuesday and Thursday evenings. Sunday mornings. Stolen moments that built into a lifetime. We celebrated birthdays together. Quiet celebrations. Just us. We traveled when we could. Weekend trips to small towns where nobody knew who Thomas Morrison was. Where he could just be Tom. Where I could hold his hand in public without hiding. We built a life in the spaces between his other life. A secret life, but a real one. More real than anything he had with Patricia and the children. I knew how this would end. Had always known. One day, Thomas would die, and I would grieve alone. In the shadows. At a distance. Watching his family perform their grief at his funeral while I stood in the back, invisible. I'd made peace with that. The price of loving someone who belonged, on paper, to someone else. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have imagined, was that Thomas had made very different plans. Plans that would bring everything into the light. Plans that would destroy the carefully constructed lies his family had built. Plans that would make me the most hated woman in Chicago. And plans that would prove, once and for all, that love, real love, always wins. Even from beyond the grave. Thomas died on a Wednesday. Not a Tuesday. Not a Thursday. Not one of our days. A Wednesday. March 14th, 3:37 in the afternoon. I was at a client meeting when my phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. Diana, this is Robert Chen, Thomas's attorney. I need you to call me immediately. It's urgent. My hand started shaking. I knew. Before I even called back, I knew. Thomas had been having chest pains for weeks. Refused to see a doctor. I'm fine, Diana. Just stress, he'd say. But I could see it in his eyes. The fatigue. The way he'd clutch his chest when he thought I wasn't looking. Our last evening together was that previous Tuesday. 2 days before. He'd seemed different. Quieter. Kept looking at me like he was memorizing my face. I love you, he said as he was leaving. Not goodbye. Just, I love you. 3 times. Like he was trying to make sure I heard it. Really hurt it. I should have known. I called Robert from my car. My client meeting forgotten. Diana, his voice was gentle. Too gentle. Thomas had a massive heart attack this afternoon. At the office. The paramedics tried everything. I'm so sorry. He's gone. The world stopped. I don't remember the drive home. Don't remember pulling into my parking space. I just remember sitting in my car, staring at nothing, feeling like someone had reached into my chest and ripped out everything vital. 23 years, gone in a heartbeat. The funeral was on Saturday. I debated going. Knew I shouldn't. Knew it would be awkward. Wrong. But I had to see him one last time. Had to say goodbye, even if I had to do it from a distance. I sat in the very back of the church. Wore black. Kept my head down. Invisible, like I'd always been. The church was packed. 600 people. Business associates. Society friends. People who knew Thomas Morrison, the businessman. The philanthropist. The family man. None of them knew Tom. The man who sang off-key in the kitchen. Who cried during old movies. Who dreamed of Montana. Patricia sat in the front row. Designer black dress. Perfect makeup. Dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief at all the right moments. The grieving widow. What a performance. Michael, Jennifer, and David flanked her. All dressed impeccably. All looking appropriately somber. Michael gave the eulogy. Talked about what an amazing father Thomas had been. How he'd taught them about integrity and hard work and family values. I wanted to scream. This man, this stranger in an expensive suit, was talking about someone I didn't recognize. Thomas hadn't taught them integrity. He'd tried. They hadn't been interested in learning. After the service, I slipped out before anyone noticed me. Drove to the cemetery but stayed in my car, watching from a distance as they lowered Thomas into the ground. Patricia threw the first handful of dirt. Then the children. Then all those people who'd used him, taken from him, performed for him. I sat in my car and cried. Real tears. Not the polite, dabbing kind. Ugly, soul-wrenching sobs. 23 years of love. And I couldn't even stand at his grave. That evening, Robert called again. Diana, the will reading is scheduled for Monday at 10 a.m. at my office. Your attendance is required. Required. That word felt wrong. Robert, I don't think that's appropriate. I'm not family. I shouldn't. Diana. His voice was firm. Thomas was very specific. You need to be there. Please. Trust me on this. I barely slept that weekend. Kept replaying every moment with Thomas. Every conversation. Every touch. Every stolen hour. And I kept wondering, why would he want me at the will reading? He knew what that would do. How it would look. Monday morning arrived too quickly. I dressed carefully. Conservative black suit. Minimal makeup. Trying to be as invisible as possible. Robert's office was downtown. Expensive. All mahogany and leather. The receptionist led me to a conference room. Patricia was already there. So were Michael, Jennifer, and David. They looked up when I walked in. The temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. What is she doing here? Patricia's voice was ice. Not grief. Not surprise. Just cold fury. Mrs. Morrison, please, Robert said calmly. Everyone named in the will has a right to be present. Named in the will. My stomach dropped. Oh no. Thomas, what did you do? Jennifer stared at me with open hatred. This is the mistress? This is the woman who's been sleeping with our father for, how long? 23 years, I heard myself say. Quietly. Not ashamed. Just honest. David laughed. Actually laughed. 23 years of being a homewrecker. Must be some kind of record. That's enough, Robert said sharply. Let's proceed with the reading. He opened the folder in front of him. Started reading in that formal, lawyer voice. The last will and testament of Thomas James Morrison, dated February 28th. That was 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks before he died. He'd updated his will 2 weeks ago. Robert continued reading. Standard legal language about being of sound mind and body. Then he got to the bequests. To my wife Patricia Morrison, in accordance with our prenuptial agreement executed in 1995, I leave the amount stipulated in said agreement. $250,000. Patricia's face went white. What? That can't be right. We've been married for 43 years. I'm entitled to. The prenup is very clear, Mrs. Morrison, Robert said calmly. And it was reviewed and reaffirmed multiple times over the years. Most recently 3 years ago. I knew about that prenup. Thomas had told me. Patricia had insisted on it before they married. Her family's lawyer had drawn it up. She'd wanted to protect her family money from Thomas, who had nothing at the time. She never imagined he'd become wealthier than her family. Never imagined the prenup would work against her. To my son Michael, Robert continued, I leave $100,000 and my collection of first edition books, with the hope that he might finally read something besides stock reports. Michael's jaw clenched. To my daughter Jennifer, I leave $100,000 and my art collection, with the sincere wish that she pursues genuine passion rather than purchased fame. Jennifer's face flushed red. To my son David, I leave $100,000 and a piece of advice, grow up. David shot out of his chair. This is bullshit. Where's the rest? The company? The estate? The investments? Robert looked at me. For just a moment, I saw sympathy in his eyes. To Diana Marie Foster, he read, who asked for nothing but gave me everything, who loved me not for what I could provide but for who I was, who spent 23 years in the shadows because I was too cowardly to bring her into the light. I leave the entirety of my remaining estate. The room exploded. What? Patricia was on her feet. This is insane. He was clearly not in his right mind. She manipulated him. Seduced him. This will is fraudulent. The company? Michael's voice was strangled. The estate? All of it? Approximately $127 million, Robert said quietly. The house on Riverside Drive. The Montana property. The company shares. All investment accounts. Everything. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't process what I was hearing. $127 million. She's a whore. Jennifer screamed. Actual screaming. A gold-digging whore who destroyed our family. Your father's instructions were very clear, Robert continued calmly. He anticipated this reaction. He asked me to read the following statement in his own words. He pulled out another document. Thomas's handwriting. I recognized it immediately. To my wife Patricia and my children Michael, Jennifer, and David, Robert read. If you're hearing this, Diana is in the room and you are angry. Good. Let me tell you why I made this decision. Robert paused. Looked around the room. Then continued. Patricia, we haven't had a real conversation in 20 years. You knew about Diana. You never cared. Not because it hurt you, but because divorce would cost you your lifestyle. You chose money over dignity. Over truth. You got exactly what you chose. Patricia's perfect composure cracked. Just for a moment. Michael, you called me 4 times last year. Every time you needed money or business advice. Never once just to talk. Never once to ask how I was doing. You treated me like a resource, not a father. Michael stared at the table. Jennifer, you're 40 years old. I've funded your acting dream for 15 years. Hundreds of thousands of dollars. You have no talent. You never did. But you kept taking because I kept giving. That ends now. Jennifer's eyes filled with tears. Real ones this time. David, you're 35 years old living in my guest house with no job, no ambition, no gratitude. Just entitlement. I enabled this. That was my failure as a father. But I won't enable it anymore, even from the grave. The room was silent now. Even David had stopped talking. Diana has been the only person in my life who loved me without wanting something from me. She never asked for money. Never demanded time I couldn't give. Never made me feel guilty for the choices I'd made. She just loved me. For 23 years. In secret. In shadows. Asking for nothing. My tears were falling now. I couldn't stop them. So I'm giving her everything. Not because she asked. But because she deserves it. And because none of you do. Robert folded the letter. That concludes the reading. Diana, I'll need to meet with you this week to begin the transfer process. Everyone else, if you wish to contest the will, that is your right. But I should inform you that Thomas Morrison was evaluated by 3 separate physicians in the 2 weeks before his death. All confirmed he was of completely sound mind. The will is ironclad. Patricia stood slowly. When she looked at me, there was pure hatred in her eyes. You haven't won, she said quietly. I will destroy you. I will make sure everyone knows what you are. A homewrecker. A manipulator. A gold digger who preyed on a lonely old man. She walked out. The children followed. At the door, Michael turned back. You think Dad loved you? You were just a midlife crisis that lasted too long. A convenient distraction. Nothing more. The door slammed. I sat alone in that conference room with Robert, shaking. Diana, Robert said gently. Thomas knew they'd react this way. That's why he prepared. Prepared how? Robert pulled out a small box. Handed it to me. He said to give you this after the reading. Said you'd need it. Inside the box was a USB drive and a note in Thomas's handwriting. My love, they will come after you. They will try to destroy your reputation. To paint you as something ugly. I'm giving you the truth. Use it if you need to. Protect yourself. I love you. Always. Tom. I looked at Robert. What's on this? His expression was unreadable. I don't know. Thomas didn't tell me. He just said, it's the truth. I drove home in a daze. $127 million. Thomas's final gift. No. Not a gift. A message. A declaration. You mattered. You always mattered. And now everyone will know. But at what cost? That night, I plugged in the USB drive. And what I found changed everything. I didn't watch the files that first night. Couldn't bring myself to. Instead, I sat in my apartment, Thomas's note in my hands, trying to process everything. $127 million. His entire life's work. Given to me. The mistress. The other woman. The one who wasn't supposed to matter. But I knew what was coming. Patricia's words echoed in my head. I will destroy you. She didn't waste time. The next morning, my phone started ringing at 6:30 a.m. Unknown numbers. Reporters. How they got my number, I'll never know. By 7 a.m. I was trending on social media. Someone had leaked my name. My photo. My address. By 8 a.m., there were news vans parked outside my building. I made the mistake of checking Twitter. The hashtag was already trending. Hashtag Gold Digger Diana. Thousands of tweets. All saying the same things. Homewrecker steals dead man's fortune from grieving family. Mistress of 23 years manipulates dying businessman into changing will. Children left with nothing while whore gets millions. The words were brutal. Relentless. Strangers who knew nothing about me, about Thomas, about our life, all certain they knew the truth. By 9 a.m., Patricia was on the morning news. Live interview. Perfect makeup. Black dress. Grieving widow performance at its finest. I watched from my apartment, unable to look away. My husband was not himself in his final months, Patricia said, her voice breaking at exactly the right moments. This woman. Diana Foster, she had been manipulating him for years, taking advantage of his loneliness, his generosity. And in the end, she convinced him to betray his own family. The interviewer, a perfectly coiffed blonde, nodded sympathetically. You had no idea about the affair? I suspected something, Patricia dabbed at her eyes. But I trusted my husband, believed in our marriage. I never imagined he'd been living a double life for over 2 decades. Or that he'd leave everything to her, and abandon the children he claimed to love. Children. They kept calling Michael, Jennifer, and David children. They were in their 30s and 40s. What will you do now? The interviewer asked. We're contesting the will, of course, Patricia said firmly. Thomas was not in his right mind. He was depressed. Confused. This woman took advantage of that. We have lawyers looking into undue influence, coercion, elder abuse. Whatever it takes to get justice for my family. Elder abuse. They were actually claiming I'd abused Thomas. The interview ended with Patricia looking directly into the camera. If you're watching this, Diana, you should be ashamed. You destroyed a family. And you will not get away with it. My phone exploded with notifications. Messages from people I hadn't spoken to in years. Some supportive. Most, not. Is it true? Were you really his mistress? How could you do that to his family? I always knew there was something off about you. By 10 a.m., I'd been fired. My boss called personally. Diana, I'm sorry, but the publicity, it's affecting the business. Clients are uncomfortable. We have to let you go. Effective immediately. I'd worked there for 12 years. By noon, my landlord called. Miss Foster, I'm going to have to ask you to vacate the premises. The other tenants are concerned, and the reporters outside are creating a disturbance. I'll give you 30 days, but please, find somewhere else. Evicted, fired, publicly destroyed. All in 6 hours. I stopped looking at social media. Stopped answering my phone. Just sat in my apartment, curtains drawn, while the world outside screamed for my blood. That evening, Jennifer went on Instagram Live. 200,000 viewers. I couldn't help myself. I watched. She was crying. Real tears this time. Sitting in what looked like Patricia's living room. I just want people to understand what this woman did to our family, Jennifer said, her voice shaking. She didn't just have an affair with my father. She systematically isolated him from us. Turned him against his own children. Made him believe we didn't love him. Lies. All lies. But the comments section ate it up. You're so brave for speaking out. Sue her for everything. Homewreckers deserve to rot. Michael posted a long statement on LinkedIn. Professional. Measured. Devastating. Thomas Morrison was a brilliant businessman and a loving father. In his final years, he fell victim to a predatory relationship with a woman who saw only his wealth. She manipulated him, isolated him from his family, and ultimately convinced him to disinherit his own children. We are pursuing all legal remedies to correct this injustice and restore our father's true legacy. 6,000 likes. Hundreds of supportive comments from the business community. And David took a different approach. He found old photos of me and Thomas. I don't know where he got them. Maybe hired a private investigator. Maybe Thomas had kept them somewhere. Photos of us at a restaurant. Walking in a park. My hand in his. He posted them everywhere with captions like "The Face of Greed" and "How to Steal a Fortune in 23 Years. By the end of the first week, I couldn't leave my apartment without being recognized. Yelled at. Photographed. One woman actually spat at me in the grocery store. "Whore," she screamed. "You should be ashamed." I stopped going out. Started having groceries delivered. But even then, the delivery drivers recognized me. I could see it in their eyes. The judgment. The disgust. Patricia filed the lawsuit on day 10. Undue influence, coercion, and elder exploitation. Asking the court to void the will and restore the rightful inheritance to the family. Her lawyer was Gerald Blackwood. Huge firm. Unlimited resources. He gave a press conference on the courthouse steps. This is a clear case of a manipulative individual taking advantage of an elderly man's vulnerability. Diana Foster systematically isolated Thomas Morrison from his family, convinced him his loved ones didn't care about him, and used their relationship to exert undue influence over his testamentary decisions. We will prove in court that this will does not reflect Thomas Morrison's true wishes, but rather the wishes of a woman who saw him as nothing more than a meal ticket. Elderly man. Thomas had been 65, sharp, successful, running a multi-million-dollar company until the day he died. But now he was elderly, vulnerable, easily manipulated. All because it fit their narrative. The court froze the estate. All $127 million, tied up in litigation that Robert said could take years. I had nothing. No job. No income. Savings that would last maybe 3 months. And a target on my back that grew larger every day. The social media campaigns got worse. Someone created a Facebook group called Justice Against Diana Foster. 50,000 members in a week. They posted my address. My phone number. Photos of my apartment building. People started showing up. Standing outside with signs. Homewrecker. Gold digger. Give back what you stole. I called the police. They said unless someone threatened violence, there was nothing they could do. Freedom of speech. My few remaining friends started distancing themselves. It's not that I don't believe you, Diana, it's just, this is a lot. And people are asking questions about anyone associated with you. I was alone. Completely alone. For the first time in 23 years, Thomas was gone. His family was destroying me. The public hated me. And I had no way to fight back. Or so I thought. 2 weeks after the will reading, I finally opened my laptop and plugged in the USB drive Thomas had left me. There were dozens of folders. All labeled by year. 2019. 2020. 2021. 2022. 2023. 2024. I opened the most recent one. February 24th. A video file. I clicked it. Thomas's face filled the screen. He was sitting in his home office. The one at the Riverside Drive house. Looking directly at the camera. Diana, my love. If you're watching this, I'm gone. And I'm guessing Patricia and the children are making your life hell. I'm sorry. I knew they would. That's why I made these recordings. My hands were shaking. What you're about to see, it's not easy. But it's the truth. 5 years of truth. I started recording our family dinners, our conversations, everything, when I realized what they really were. Who they really were. I couldn't see it before. Didn't want to see it. But once I did, I couldn't unsee it. He paused. Looked so tired. Use these if you need to. Protect yourself. Because they're going to try to destroy you. And I won't be there to defend you. So I'm giving you the weapons to defend yourself. The video ended. I opened the first audio file in the folder. Dated 3 years ago. Family dinner. I could hear voices. Thomas. Patricia. The children. I pressed play. And what I heard made me realize just how much Thomas had been protecting me from. Patricia's voice, crystal clear. Honestly, Thomas, I don't understand why we still do these ridiculous family dinners. It's not like we enjoy each other's company. Thomas, Patricia, there are children. Patricia, they're adults who only show up when they need money. Just like I only stay because leaving would be financially inconvenient. Let's not pretend this is about family. Silence. Then Michael's voice. Dad, speaking of money, I need to talk to you about that investment opportunity one mentioned. I closed the file. Opened another. More recent. 6 months ago. Patricia's voice again. Different conversation. Talking to someone on the phone. Thomas must have recorded it from another room. No, Richard, I can't leave yet. The prenup is iron tight. If I divorce him, I get almost nothing. But if I stay, when the old fool finally dies, community property laws. I can fight for half of everything he built after we married. Just need to wait it out. He's 64. How much longer can he have? My heart stopped. She'd been planning this. Waiting for him to die. I kept listening. File after file. Year after year. Jennifer on the phone with a friend, Dad's such a sucker. I just tell him the acting thing is going well, show him some fake callback notices, and boom, another $50K in my account. It's like printing money. David talking to his girlfriend, dude's loaded and he lets me live here rent-free. Why would I get a job? I'll just wait for him to kick it and then, cha-ching. Trust fund baby for life. Michael at a family dinner, let's be honest, Dad. You're not going to be CEO forever. Someone needs to take over the company. Someone young. Someone the board respects. Hint hint. Thomas, Michael, you work in finance, not. Michael, come on, Dad. Don't be selfish. You've had your run. Time to pass the torch to family. Real family. Not whatever millennial diversity hires you've been promoting. And then, the worst one. Dated 7 months ago. Patricia and the children together. Thomas must have hidden a recorder in the dining room. David, so when do you think the old man's gonna go? He's been looking rough lately. Jennifer, David. That's horrible. David, what? I'm just saying what we're all thinking. He's 65. Chest pains. High blood pressure. Could be any day. Patricia, David does have a point. We should be prepared. Make sure everything is in order. Thomas has been acting strange lately. Talking about changing his will. Making sure things are fair, he says. Michael, fair? What does that mean? Patricia, I don't know. But I don't like it. We need to make sure he doesn't do anything impulsive. Maybe suggest he talk to his doctor about his mental state. Depression. Confusion. Diminished capacity. Jennifer, Mom, are you saying? Patricia, I'm saying we protect what's ours. This family. This legacy. We don't let outsiders or, whatever latest midlife crisis your father is having, destroy what we've built. Michael, the mistress? Patricia, he thinks I don't know. Please. I've known for years. Some event planner. It's pathetic, really. But as long as she stays in her lane, stays out of sight, fine. But if she starts getting ideas, if Thomas starts getting ideas about her, David, what would he do? Leave her money? Patricia laughed. Actually laughed. Over my dead body. Or his. Whatever comes first. The recording ended. I sat in the dark, my laptop screen glowing, tears streaming down my face. Thomas had heard this. Had recorded this. Had lived with this knowledge. And still he'd stayed. For them. Out of obligation. Out of guilt. Out of some misplaced sense of duty. Until he couldn't anymore. I opened the final folder. The one labeled for Diana only. Inside was one video file. Watch this last. I clicked it. Thomas appeared on screen again. But this time he was in my apartment. On my couch. I recognized the day. It was 3 weeks before he died. One of our Tuesday evenings. He must have set up his phone to record while I was in the kitchen. Diana, his voice was soft. By the time you see this, you'll have heard the other recordings. You'll know what they really think. What they really are. And you're probably wondering why I stayed. Why I didn't just leave. Just choose you. Choose us. Choose happiness. He took a breath. The truth is, I was a coward. I was afraid of their anger. Of disappointing them, even though they'd been disappointing me for years. I was afraid of the scandal. Of what people would think. Of being the man who abandoned his family for his mistress. A tear rolled down his cheek. But I'm not afraid anymore. Because I'm dying, Diana. The doctors told me 2 months ago. Heart disease. Advanced. 6 months at most. I didn't tell you because I didn't want our last months to be about death. I wanted them to be about life. About us. My vision blurred. I couldn't breathe. So I made a choice. Finally. After 23 years of choosing them. I chose you. I changed the will. I'm leaving you everything. Not because you asked, but because you're the only one who deserves it. The only one who loved me. Really loved me. He looked directly into the camera. At me. They're going to come after you. Going to try to destroy you. Use the recordings. Show the world who they really are. Don't be afraid. Don't hide. Fight back. You have the truth. That's all you need. He smiled. That smile I loved. I'm sorry I couldn't choose you in life, but in death, you're my choice. My only choice. I love you, Diana Marie Foster. I always will. The video ended. I sat there in the dark, sobbing. For Thomas. For us. For 23 years of stolen moments and hidden love. And then, I dried my tears. Patricia wanted to destroy me? The children wanted to paint me as a manipulator? Fine. Let's see how they felt when the world heard their own words. It was time to fight back. I spent 3 days organizing everything. Every audio file. Every video. Every piece of evidence Thomas had collected over 5 years. 5 years of family dinners where they mocked him. 5 years of phone calls where they plotted. 5 years of conversations that revealed who they really were. Robert Chen, Thomas's attorney, came to my apartment on the 4th day. I'd called him. Told him I needed help. He walked in, saw my laptop surrounded by notebooks filled with transcriptions and timestamps, and let out a low whistle. Thomas told me he'd been documenting things, Robert said quietly. But I had no idea it was this extensive. They're claiming he was mentally incompetent, I said. My voice was steadier than I felt. That I manipulated a vulnerable old man. These recordings prove otherwise. They prove who was really doing the manipulating. Robert sat down, put on his reading glasses, and started going through the files. I watched his expression change. Shock, disgust, and finally, something like grim satisfaction. Diana, he said after an hour. This is damning. Patricia talking about waiting for him to die. The children discussing his death like it's a payday. Jennifer admitting to scamming him. David's complete lack of remorse. And that conversation about having him declared mentally incompetent. Can we use it? I asked. In court? Absolutely. Illinois is a one-party consent state. Thomas had every right to record conversations he was part of. And even the ones he wasn't directly in, he was in his own home. He had every legal right. Robert looked at me. But Diana, if we release these, it's going to get ugly. Uglier than it already is. It can't get much uglier than 50,000 people calling me a whore on the internet, I said flatly. Robert was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded. Okay. Let's do this right. We need a strategy. We can't just dump this online. We need to control the narrative. Change it. He made some calls. By the end of the day, we had a plan. First, we'd release a carefully edited compilation to the media. Not everything. Just enough to show the family's true colors. The most damning quotes. The clearest evidence of their greed. Second, we'd file a motion in court to admit the full recordings as evidence. Show the judge exactly who was really manipulating whom. Third, and this was Robert's idea, we'd do one interview. Just one. Let me tell my side of the story. Humanize myself before the recordings dropped. People think they know you, Robert said. They think you're the villain. We need to show them who you really are before we show them who the Morrisons really are. He reached out to Sarah Chen. No relation to Robert, just coincidentally the same last name. She was an investigative journalist. Respected. Fair. Known for digging into the truth rather than just repeating gossip. She agreed to the interview immediately. We met at a neutral location. A quiet office space Robert rented for the day. Sarah came alone. No camera crew. Just her, a voice recorder, and a notepad. She was younger than I expected. Maybe 40. Kind eyes. She shook my hand and said, "Thank you for trusting me with your story." We talked for 3 hours. I told her everything. How Thomas and I met. The 23 years. The Tuesday and Thursday evenings. The Sunday mornings. How I never asked for anything. Never wanted anything except him. I told her about the will. The shock. The family's reaction. The public destruction that followed. And I told her about the recordings. What Thomas had documented. why he'd done it. He knew they'd come after me, I said. He knew exactly what they were. And he gave me the truth, his final gift. Sarah listened. Really listened. Took notes. Asked questions that were tough but fair. Diana, she said finally. People are going to say you're releasing these recordings out of revenge. Out of spite. How do you respond to that? I looked at her directly. I'm releasing them because I'm tired of being called a liar. I'm tired of being painted as a manipulator when I'm the one who was loved. Really loved. Not for money. Not for status. Just, loved. These recordings don't show my truth. They show Thomas's truth. His family's truth. And people deserve to know it. Sarah's article dropped on a Friday morning. Front page of the Chicago Tribune. Online edition went up at 6 a.m. The headline, The Other Woman Speaks, Diana Foster's 23-year love story and the recordings that change everything. It was fair. Balanced. Sarah laid out both sides. The family's claims. My story. And then, she mentioned the recordings. Foster has provided this reporter with audio and video recordings made by Thomas Morrison in the 5 years before his death. The recordings, which Morrison's attorney confirms are legally obtained, paint a troubling picture of a family more interested in inheritance than relationship. The Tribune has reviewed dozens of hours of recordings. What follows are selected excerpts. And then she published them. The quotes. Time-stamped. Verified. Undeniable. Patricia, I can't wait for the old fool to finally die so I can actually live my life. David, why would I get a job? I'll just wait for him to kick it and then cash in. Jennifer, Dad's such a sucker. I just tell him what he wants to hear and boom, another $50K. Michael, he's not going to be CEO forever. Time to pass the torch before he makes more stupid decisions. Patricia, over my dead body. Or his. Whatever comes first. The internet exploded. Within an hour, the article had 1 million views. Within 2 hours, it was trending worldwide. Hashtag Morrison family exposed. Hashtag Diana was right. Hashtag gold digger family. The narrative flipped so fast it gave me whiplash. Suddenly, I wasn't the villain anymore. The Morrisons were. Comments poured in. Oh my God, they're the actual monsters. That poor man. 43 years married to a woman who couldn't wait for him to die. Diana loved him. They used him. This is so clear now. I owe this woman an apology. We all do. Patricia's phone must have been ringing off the hook because by 9 a.m., she'd released a statement through her lawyer. These recordings are taken out of context. Private conversations never meant for public consumption. The Morrison family is devastated by this violation of privacy and will be pursuing legal action against Diana Foster for defamation and emotional distress. Nobody was buying it. Sarah Chen did a follow-up piece that afternoon. Context doesn't change these words. Full recordings released. She published the full audio files. Not edited. Not cut. Complete conversations with full context. It was worse with context. The recording showed a pattern. Years of it. Thomas trying to connect. Them shutting him down. Thomas offering love. Them asking for money. Thomas hoping for relationship. Them performing just enough to keep the cash flowing. And Patricia. Patricia's conversations were chilling. Talking to her friends about how much longer she'd have to put up with Thomas. Discussing her post-Thomas life. Planning her freedom like she was serving a prison sentence. By that evening, the hashtag had changed. Hashtag Justice for Thomas was trending. People weren't just defending me anymore. They were mourning him. Understanding what he'd lived through. Jennifer tried to do damage control. Posted a tearful video on Instagram. Those recordings, they sound bad. I know they do. But you have to understand, we were grieving. We were processing. Dad had just cut us out of his will for a woman we'd never met. We were angry. We said things we didn't mean. The comments destroyed her. The recordings are from before he died. Years before. Try again. You literally admitted to scamming your father. On tape. There's no spin for this. Your tears are fake. We heard your real voice. The one you used when Daddy couldn't hear. Michael deleted all his social media accounts. Just, gone. Wiped his LinkedIn, his Twitter, everything. David was the only one who tried to fight back. He went on a podcast. Big mistake. The host asked him directly, David, in one recording, you discuss waiting for your father to die so you could cash in. How do you explain that? David got defensive. Angry. Look, everyone says stuff like that. Everyone thinks about inheritance. It's not like I actually wanted him to die. But you said, and I quote, could be any day. We should be ready. That sounds pretty calculated. I was joking. It was dark humor. People are taking this way too seriously. Your father is dead, David. And you're living in his guest house rent-free at 35 years old with no job. How is that a joke? David walked out of the interview. The clip went viral. 10 million views in 24 hours. By Monday, a week after Sarah's first article, the court of public opinion had completely reversed. People were sending me messages. Apologies. Support. Strangers saying they'd judged me wrong. I'm so sorry for what I said about you. You deserved better than what we put you through. Thomas was lucky to have you. But the real battle was still in court. Patricia's lawyer filed a motion to have the recordings excluded. Invasion of privacy. Unlawful surveillance. Irrelevant to the question of testamentary capacity. Robert filed our opposition. And then, he did something brilliant. He filed a counter-claim. Not just defending the will. Attacking. Conspiracy to commit elder abuse. Attempted undue influence. Fraud. We were suing them. The hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks out. Robert spent every day preparing. We went through every recording. Every transcript. Built a timeline of 5 years of abuse. Not physical abuse. Emotional. Financial. Psychological. Death by 1,000 cuts. Thomas had lived with people who saw him as a bank account with a heartbeat. Who counted down the days until he died. Who performed love just well enough to keep the money flowing. The judge needs to see this isn't just about the will, Robert explained. It's about why Thomas changed the will. What he was protecting you from. What he was punishing them for. The courthouse steps on the day of the hearing looked like a media circus. Cameras everywhere. Reporters shouting questions. Patricia arrived with her legal team. 5 lawyers. Expensive suits. She was still playing the grieving widow. Black dress. Minimal makeup. But her eyes were pure fury when she saw me. We didn't speak. Just stared at each other across the courthouse lobby. Inside, the courtroom was packed. Standing room only. The judge, a woman in her 60s named Margaret Holbrook, looked tired before we even started. This case, she said, has generated more media attention than any inheritance dispute I've seen in 30 years on the bench. I want to be clear, I don't care about public opinion. I care about the law. And the facts. So let's proceed. Patricia's lawyer went first. Gerald Blackwood. Slick, confident. Performed outrage like he'd practiced in a mirror. Your Honor, this is a simple case. Thomas Morrison was a 65-year-old man with heart disease. He was depressed. Isolated from his family by his mistress. And in his final weeks, suffering from diminished capacity, he made a decision that contradicted 4 decades of family values. The will must be voided. He presented medical records showing Thomas's heart condition. Presented testimony from a psychiatrist who'd never actually met Thomas but was willing to say that a fair fog could cause temporary irrationality. It was thin. Really thin. Then Robert stood up. Your Honor, the petitioners claim Thomas Morrison was manipulated. Isolated. Mentally incapable. I'd like to present evidence that shows exactly the opposite. And evidence that shows who was really doing the manipulating. He played the recordings. Not all of them. Just the worst ones. The most damning. Patricia talking about waiting for Thomas to die. The children discussing his death like a business transaction. Jennifer admitting to scamming him. The courtroom was silent except for the voices on the recordings. When Patricia's voice said over my dead body. Or his. Whatever comes first, several people in the gallery gasped. Judge Holbrook's expression never changed. But she took notes. Pages of notes. After the recordings, Robert called me to the stand. I was terrified. My hands were shaking. But I told the truth. About loving Thomas for 23 years. About never asking for anything. About finding him not through manipulation but through genuine connection. About the Tuesday and Thursday evenings. The Sunday mornings. The small moments that built into a lifetime. And about his final video message. His explanation. His choice. Thomas wasn't diminished, I said, looking directly at the judge. He was finally clear. For the first time in decades, he could see who actually loved him. And he made his choice accordingly. Patricia's lawyer cross-examined me. Tried to paint me as a seductress. A schemer. Isn't it true, Miss Foster, that you maintained this relationship for 23 years specifically to position yourself for inheritance? No. Isn't it true that you knew Thomas was wealthy and saw an opportunity? I knew he was wealthy. Everyone knew. But I never asked for money. Never even accepted expensive gifts. I loved him. That's all. You expect us to believe you were content being the other woman for over 2 decades? I looked at him steadily. I was content being the woman he loved. The woman he could be himself with, yes. How convenient that this supposed love resulted in $127 million. Robert objected. Argumentative. Sustained, Judge Holbrook said. Mr. Blackwood, do you have actual questions? He didn't. Not really. Because what could he ask? The recordings spoke for themselves. The hearing lasted 2 days. Both sides presented evidence. Experts. Testimony. But really, it came down to those recordings. Thomas's voice. His family's voices. The truth in their own words. On the 3rd day, Judge Holbrook delivered her ruling. I've practiced law for 40 years, she said. I've seen many inheritance disputes. Usually, the truth is murky. Competing narratives. Unclear motivations. This case is different. This case has something rare, incontrovertible evidence of the deceased's true wishes and the reasons behind them. She looked at Patricia and the children. The recordings presented by the defendant show a pattern of financial exploitation, emotional manipulation, and callous disregard for Thomas Morrison's well-being. While not illegal in the criminal sense, they provide clear context for his testamentary decisions. Patricia's face went white. Thomas Morrison was not incompetent. He was not manipulated by Diana Foster. He was, by all accounts, a successful businessman running a multi-million-dollar company until his death. He was evaluated by 3 physicians who confirmed his mental capacity. He made his choice with full awareness of the consequences. Judge Holbrook looked at me. Miss Foster, I'm sure you're aware that your relationship with Thomas Morrison violated conventional morality. Many people will judge you for it. That's not my concern. My concern is the law. And legally, Thomas Morrison had every right to leave his estate to whomever he chose. She picked up her gavel. The will is upheld in its entirety. The estate will be transferred to Diana Foster as specified. Furthermore, I'm dismissing the claims of undue influence as frivolous and awarding attorney's fees to the defendant. This family has wasted enough of the court's time. The gavel came down. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't process it. I'd won. Robert squeezed my shoulder. It's over, he whispered. You did it. Patricia stood up slowly. Looked at me with such hatred I actually flinched. You haven't won anything, she said quietly. You'll always be what you are. A mistress. A homewrecker. Money doesn't change that. I looked at her steadily. You're right. Money doesn't change what I am. I'm the woman your husband loved. The woman who was there when he needed someone. The woman who asked for nothing and got everything because that's what love actually is. I paused. But you? You're the woman who couldn't wait for him to die. And no amount of money will ever change that. She walked out. The children followed. Michael wouldn't even look at me. Jennifer was crying. David was on his phone, probably already spinning this to his friends. Outside the courthouse, there were reporters everywhere. Cameras. Microphones. Questions shouted from every direction. Robert handled it. Made a brief statement. Justice has been served today. Thomas Morrison's wishes have been honored. Diana Foster looks forward to using this inheritance to honor his memory and his legacy. Thank you. We didn't take questions. Just got into Robert's car and drove away. That evening, alone in my apartment, I opened my laptop. Logged into the bank account Robert had set up. The transfer had gone through. $127 million. I stared at the number. More money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. But all I could think about was Thomas. His smile. His terrible singing. The way he'd hold my hand like he was afraid to let go. Money didn't bring him back. Didn't fill the void. Didn't change the fact that I'd spend the rest of my life missing him. But it did do one thing. It proved he'd chosen me. Finally. Completely. Irrevocably. After 43 years of choosing obligation over happiness, he'd chosen love. And that was worth more than $127 million. That was everything. The first thing I did with the money was nothing. For 2 weeks, I just sat with it. With the reality of it. With the weight of what Thomas had done. $127 million. His entire life's work. Given to me. The woman who wasn't supposed to exist. The woman who loved him in the margins. The media attention finally started to die down. New scandals. New stories. The internet moved on, as it always does. But some things stayed changed. Patricia filed for bankruptcy 4 months later. Turns out, she'd been living far beyond even Thomas's generous allowances. Credit cards maxed out. Personal loans from friends she couldn't repay. The $250,000 from the prenup was gone in weeks. She had to sell her jewelry, her designer wardrobe, everything. Last I heard, she was living in a modest condo in the suburbs. Alone. Her society friends had disappeared the moment the money did. Funny how that works. Michael lost his job. Not directly because of the scandal, his firm claimed. Restructuring. But everyone knew. The recordings had destroyed his reputation in the business community. Who wants to work with a man who talked about his father dying like it was a stock opportunity? He moved to Phoenix. Started over. Last I heard, he was doing okay. Not great. But okay. Sometimes I think about reaching out, offering something. But then I remember his words at the will reading. You were just a midlife crisis that lasted too long. Some bridges burn themselves. Jennifer actually apologized. 6 months after the court ruling, I got a letter. Handwritten. 4 pages. Diana, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even know if I deserve forgiveness. But I need you to know, you were right. About everything. I was using Dad. We all were. And the worst part is, I knew it. I just didn't care. The money was too easy. And admitting the truth would mean admitting what I'd become. I'm in therapy now. Trying to figure out who I am without Dad's money. It's hard. But I think it's what I should have done 20 years ago. I'm sorry for what we put you through. And I'm sorry Dad had to live his whole life with people who didn't deserve him. You did. You really did. I cried reading that letter. Cried for the daughter Thomas had hoped Jennifer would become. Cried for the wasted years, the wasted love. I wrote back. Told her I forgave her. Offered to help if she needed it. She declined. Said she needed to do this on her own. I respected that. We exchange emails now. Every few months. She's working as a teacher. Elementary school. Making $38,000 a year. Loves it. Says it's the first time in her life she's done something that matters. I'm proud of her. Thomas would be too. David never apologized. Never reached out. Last I heard, he was living with his girlfriend's family. Still no job. Still entitled. Still angry at the world for not giving him what he thought he deserved. Some people never learn. But I didn't spend my time thinking about the Morrisons. I had other things to do. Robert helped me set up the Thomas Morrison Foundation. We started with a clear mission, supporting children of single mothers who wanted to pursue higher education. Thomas had told me once, late one night in my apartment, about growing up with just his mother. His father had left when Thomas was 6. His mother worked 3 jobs to keep them fed. Died of exhaustion at 52, 3 weeks before Thomas's first big business success. I wish she could have seen it, he'd said, tears in his eyes. Wish she could have known it was all worth it. That I made it. So we created scholarships in his mother's name. Grace Morrison Scholarships. Full ride. Tuition, room, board, books. Everything. The first year, we funded 20 students. The second year, 50. By the third year, we were funding 200 students annually. Kids who would never have had a chance otherwise. Kids like Thomas had been. I read every application personally. Every essay. Every story of struggle and hope and determination. And I thought about Thomas. About how proud he would be. About how this was the legacy he'd really wanted. Not business success. Not wealth. But giving back. Lifting others up. I kept my apartment. The small one. Didn't move into the Riverside Drive mansion. Couldn't. Too many ghosts. Too many memories of a life that wasn't mine. I sold it instead. Used the money to build the Grace Morrison Education Center. A place where scholarship students could get tutoring, mentoring, career counseling. Everything they needed to succeed. The Montana property, that one I kept. The cabin Thomas had dreamed about. Where he'd wanted to retire. To just exist. I go there sometimes. Sit on the porch. Watch the mountains. Feel close to him in a way I can't anywhere else. I never remarried. Never even dated. Some people think that's sad. Wasting my life mourning a dead man. But I don't see it that way. I had 23 years with the love of my life. 23 years of Tuesday and Thursday evenings. Sunday mornings. Stolen moments that added up to a lifetime of love. How many people can say that? How many people get even 1 year of what Thomas and I had? I was lucky. So incredibly lucky. 5 years after Thomas died, I was invited to speak at a women's business conference. They wanted me to talk about the foundation. About philanthropy. About managing wealth. I almost said no. Public speaking terrified me. And I knew there would still be judgment. Still be people who saw me as the mistress. The other woman. The one who didn't deserve what she got. But then I thought about Thomas. About his final message. Don't hide. Fight back. You have the truth. So I said yes. The conference was huge. 3,000 women. Successful. Accomplished. Intimidating. I stood backstage, shaking, wondering what I was doing there. The moderator introduced me. Listed my accomplishments with the foundation. The scholarships. The education center. All the good we'd done. She left out the scandal. The controversy. The recordings. But I knew everyone was thinking about it. I walked onto that stage, looked at 3,000 faces, and decided to just tell the truth. My name is Diana Foster, I said. And for 23 years, I was in love with a married man. You could hear a pin drop. I know what that makes me in your eyes. A homewrecker. A mistress. Someone who violated the sacred bonds of marriage. And I won't stand here and tell you that what we did was right. Morally. Conventionally. It wasn't. I paused. Took a breath. But I will tell you it was real. The love was real. And sometimes love doesn't fit into the boxes society creates for it. I told them everything. The whole story. Thomas and Patricia's loveless marriage. The children who saw their father as an ATM. The 23 years of loving someone in the shadows. And I told them about the will. The recordings. The public destruction. The fight. When Thomas left me everything, I said, people assumed it was about money. That I'd spent 23 years playing the long game. Waiting for the payday. I looked out at the audience. So many faces. So much judgment. But also, curiosity. Interest. Maybe even understanding. But here's what they didn't know. Here's what the recordings proved. I never asked Thomas for anything. Not once in 23 years. Never asked for money. Never asked him to leave his wife. Never demanded more than he could give. I just loved him. Loved him for who he was. Not what he could provide. And in a world where his own family loved him only for his money, that was revolutionary. I told them about the foundation. About the scholarships. About the hundreds of students whose lives had been changed. Thomas's family wanted his money to maintain their lifestyle. To fund their entitlement. To keep the comfortable life they'd built on his sacrifice. I wanted his money to do what he would have wanted. To help people who reminded him of himself. To give opportunities to those who needed them most. I paused. So yes, I was a mistress. Yes, I broke conventional rules. Yes, I loved a man who wasn't mine to love. But I also honored him. Honored his memory. Honored his true values. And I think that matters more than the labels society puts on people like me. The applause started slowly. Then built. And built. Until all 3,000 women were on their feet. I stood there, tears streaming down my face, overwhelmed. Afterward, dozens of women came up to me. Shared their own stories. Their own complicated loves. Their own experiences with judgment and redemption. One woman, maybe 60, took my hand and said, "My husband left me for another woman 20 years ago. I hated her. Hated them both. But your story, it made me realize. Maybe she wasn't the villain. Maybe my marriage was already dead, and I was just too proud to admit it. Thank you for helping me see that." Another woman, younger, said, "I've been the other woman. For 5 years. He keeps promising to leave his wife, but I don't think he will. Your story made me realize. If he really loved me, he'd choose me. Like Thomas chose you. I deserve to be chosen." These conversations, these moments, they meant more to me than all the money. More than the court victory. More than anything. Because they meant Thomas's story mattered. Our story mattered. 7 years after his death, I was at the Education Center when a young woman approached me. Early 20s. Grace Morrison scholar. Full ride to Northwestern. Studying medicine. "Miss Foster," she said shyly. "I just wanted to thank you. This scholarship, it changed my life. I never could have afforded college otherwise. My mom raised me alone. 3 jobs. Just like the foundation story. And now I'm going to be a doctor. Because of you. Because of Thomas Morrison." She showed me a photo. Her at her white coat ceremony. Her mother beside her, beaming with pride. Both of them crying happy tears. "This is my mom, Grace," the girl said. "I know the scholarship is named after Thomas Morrison's mother. But when I got it, when I told my mom, we both cried. Because it felt like someone finally saw us. saw how hard Mom worked, saw how much we sacrificed, and said, "You matter. Your dreams matter." I hugged this girl I'd never met. This daughter of a single mother who'd beaten the odds. This future doctor who would save lives and change the world. And I thought about Thomas. About how this was what he'd really wanted. Not monuments to his business success. But moments like this. Lives changed. Futures created. This was his real legacy. That evening, I drove to the cemetery. First time in months. I usually avoided it. Too painful. But tonight, I needed to visit. I sat by his grave as the sun set. Talked to him like I used to. Told him about the foundation. The students. The lives we were changing together. "We did it, Tom," I whispered. "We took everything they tried to use to destroy us and turned it into something beautiful. Something that matters." The wind picked up. I know it was just wind. Just nature. But for a moment, just a moment, it felt like an answer. Like he'd heard me. "I miss you," I said. "Every single day. Tuesday and Thursday evenings aren't the same. Sunday mornings are lonely. But I'm okay. I'm doing what you wanted. Living. Fighting. Making our love mean something." I traced his name on the headstone. Thomas James Morrison. Beloved. They'd added that word after the court case. After the truth came out. Someone, maybe Jennifer, had added it. Beloved. He was. By me. Completely. Eternally. I stayed until the stars came out. Until the cemetery closed. Until the groundskeeper gently told me it was time to go. As I walked back to my car, I passed another grave. Fresh flowers. Recent. A young couple standing there, holding each other, crying. The man looked up. Saw me. Recognition flickered in his eyes. "You're Diana Foster," he said. I nodded. Waited for judgment. Criticism. It still happens sometimes. "My wife and we saw your speech. The one from the conference. It's online." He squeezed his wife tighter. "We've been together 10 years. She was married when we met. To someone who hurt her. I helped her leave. And everyone judged us. Called us cheaters. Homewreckers. Said our love was wrong." His wife spoke, her voice soft. "Your story helped us understand. Sometimes love doesn't follow the rules. Sometimes the rules are wrong. And sometimes choosing love is the bravest thing you can do." They thanked me. Walked away hand in hand. And I realized this was Thomas's final gift. Not the money. Not the vindication. But the permission. Permission for people to love authentically. To choose happiness over convention. To honor real connection over empty obligation. Our story gave other people permission to tell theirs. 10 years after Thomas died, the foundation hit a milestone. 1,000 students funded. 1,000 lives changed. 1,000 futures created. We threw a reunion. Brought back as many scholars as we could. Doctors. Lawyers. Teachers. Engineers. Artists. All of them successful. All of them grateful. One by one, they shared their stories. Where they came from. What they'd overcome. What the scholarship meant. And one by one, they thanked Thomas. Thanked me. Thanked the love that had created this opportunity. At the end of the night, a young man, maybe 25, first-year scholar, now a civil rights attorney, stood up. "Miss Foster," he said. "I never met Thomas Morrison. He died before I even applied. But I feel like I know him. Because of you. Because of this foundation. Because of the legacy you built together." He paused. Looked around the room at all the other scholars. "People talk about your relationship like it's a scandal. A controversy. A cautionary tale. But I think it's a love story. The best kind. The kind where love creates something bigger than itself. Where two people's connection changes the world." He raised his glass. "To Thomas and Diana. Proof that love always wins. Even from the shadows. Even from beyond the grave. Even when the whole world says it's wrong." Everyone raised their glasses. 1,000 voices saying the same thing. To Thomas and Diana. I stood there, tears flowing, overwhelmed by the beauty of what we'd created. What love had created. And I heard Thomas's voice in my head. From that final video. That final message. "Don't hide. Fight back. You have the truth." I'd fought. I'd won. And now the truth was everywhere. Not the truth about wills and inheritance and legal battles. The truth about love. Real love doesn't ask permission. Doesn't follow rules. Doesn't care about convention or judgment or what people think. Real love just is. And it changes everything. That night, I went home to my small apartment. The same one. The one Thomas had visited every Tuesday and Thursday. The one where we'd danced in the kitchen and watched old movies and built a life in stolen moments. I sat on the couch. Our couch. And I closed my eyes. And I could feel him. Still. After 10 years. Still there in every corner. Every memory. Every breath. We did good, Tom, I whispered to the empty room. Your family wanted your money for themselves. I gave it away to people who actually needed it. Your wife wanted you for status. I wanted you for you. And in the end, love won. Love always wins. I opened my laptop. Checked the foundation account. Enough money for another 50 years of scholarships. Another 1,000 lives. Another generation of Grace Morrison scholars who would go out and change the world. Thomas Morrison's true legacy. Not buildings with his name on them. Not companies or mansions or wealth. But lives. Changed lives. Futures. Hope. That's what love creates when it's real. I thought about Patricia. Living in her modest condo. Alone. Bitter. Waiting for a life that would never come back. I thought about Michael in Phoenix. Starting over. Building something real for the first time. I thought about Jennifer. Teaching elementary school. Finally using her life for something meaningful. And David. Still angry. Still entitled. Still learning nothing. Each of them living with the consequences of their choices. Just like I was living with mine. The difference? I had no regrets. 23 years of loving Thomas Morrison. 23 years of Tuesday and Thursday evenings. Sunday mornings. Stolen moments. Would I do it again? Knowing how it would end? Knowing the judgment, the scandal, the pain? In a heartbeat. Because love, real love, is worth everything. Worth the secrets. Worth the shadows. Worth the price. Thomas taught me that. And in the end, he proved it. By choosing me. Finally. Completely. Irrevocably. By giving me not just his money, but his trust. His faith. His belief that I would honor what we had. And I did. Every day. Every scholarship. Every life changed. I honored him. Honored us. Honored the love that society said didn't count but meant everything. They called me a mistress. A homewrecker. A gold digger. But I know what I really am. I'm the woman Thomas Morrison loved. Really loved. For who I was, not what I could give him. And that's worth more than all the money in the world. That's the inheritance that matters. Love. Real. True. Eternal love. The kind that survives death. Survives scandal. Survives everything. Because love doesn't die. It just changes. Transforms. Becomes something new. For Thomas and me, it became a foundation. A legacy. 1,000 changed lives and counting. Not bad for a love story that wasn't supposed to exist. Not bad at all. Thank you for walking this difficult road with me to the very end. If this story resonated with you, you can support our community by sending a super thanks. It helps me continue to bring these important stories to light. On the screen now are 2 more stories that I know will touch your soul. I'll see you in the next one. Stay strong.